You might not know Sara Baartman's face, but you know her body. About 200 years ago, a young South African woman named Sara Baartman endured a life of hardship and humiliation, as she was exhibited as a spectacle in European freak shows because of her big bum. Today, women all over the world spend a lot of money trying to have what they perceive to be the ideal physique, but for Sara Baartman, this led to abuse that continued long after her death. Many people are unaware of Sara Baartman, the woman with the largest buttocks, or the experience she had in the hands of her slave masters simply because she had such a large back. They also are unaware of how she ended up being displayed as a freak show attraction in London and Paris, and what they actually did with her body after she passed away. Sara Baartman, also known as Hottentot Venus, is a typical case of another type of horrible African slavery experience that should have never happened. In this video we expose the dark history of the abuse of Sara Baartman, but before we proceed with the video, please, if you haven't subscribed yet and you found value in this video, kindly hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up and share your opinion in the comment section below. Sara Baartman was born in the late 18th century in the Eastern Cape 1789 to the Khoikhoi tribe in South Africa's Eastern Cape region. She was brought up into a family of cattle herders at the Gamtus River in the Eastern Cape. There are many details about the life of Sara Baartman that are still either unknown or unconfirmed because some have been hidden. Because she lost both of her parents when she was just 2 years old and was orphaned as a teenager, Sara had to live in constant suffering. Baartman grew up on a colonial farm where her family most probably worked as servants. Sara's mother was a native of the Khoi tribe, which is the oldest tribe in South Africa. Back then, the ladies of this tribe were considered to be more attractive due to their lighter skin tones and well-developed hips. Being the daughter of a member of the Khoikhoi tribe, Sara inherited her mother's well-developed hips. Her body was characterized as grotesque, lascivious and obscene because of her protruding buttocks, which was due to a condition called steatopigia that occurs naturally among people in arid parts of southern Africa. With this condition, women develop significant amounts of adipose tissue on her buttocks and thighs. Occasionally, the fat even stretches beyond of the thighs, giving the woman a curvy appearance. She also had elongated labia, a physical feature derogatorily referred to as a Hottentot apron. Both became symbolic markers of racial difference, and many other women from this part of Africa were trafficked to Europe for white entertainment. Her mother died when she was 2 years old and her father, who was a cattle driver, died when she reached adolescence. At 16, Baartman got pregnant by a Khoikhoi man who was a drummer, and they had one child together, but the child died shortly after birth. Soon after, she was sold into slavery to a trader named Peter Willem Sezo, who took her to Cape Town where she became a domestic servant to his brother. It was during this time that she was given the name Saartjie, a Dutch diminutive for Sara. Her life took a more tragic turn when she was taken away from her homeland under false pretenses by a British surgeon, William Dunlop. Sara had to travel back to London with Dunlop and his business partner, a man of mixed race named Hendrik Caesars, to persuade her to sign a contract with them to be exploited as a freak show attraction. They persuaded her that she could make a lot of money by exposing her body for entertainment. With her timidity, the unwary Sara accepted and signed the Dr. Dunlop written contract, not realizing that its contents were fictitious and that Sara Baartman would be kept in servitude for the remainder of her life as long as the agreement was in force. In October 1810, although illiterate, Baartman allegedly signed a contract with said surgeon, saying she would travel to England to take part in shows. In London, Baartman attracted crowds who were fascinated by her huge backside, which was caused by a condition called steatopigia, that was common among the Khoisan people. Early 19th century European invaders found Sara fascinating because of her stunning appearance. Because of their racial prejudices, the Europeans classified her as a lower being, which led them to subject her to the worst forms of physical exploitation. As destitute as she was as an orphan, Sara was employed as a domestic in Cape Town after being bought from her previous employer, an African farmer of the Khoikhoi tribe, by William Dunlop, a Dutch doctor and member of the Royal Navy. Dunlop exploited Sara as his slave and hot servant in Cape Town for a while before moving her to London in 1810, and ever since her situation has gotten worse. In London, Sara was given the stage name Hottentot Venus. She was made to wear tight, flesh-colored clothing, beads, and feathers, and was put on display for money. This dehumanizing exhibition reduced her to a mere object of curiosity. Wealthy customers would pay for private displays in their homes where they were even allowed to touch her inappropriately. Dunlop and Hendrick planned freak performances in England, Ireland, other UK cities, and the Netherlands while making enormous sums of money and giving Baartman only a little amount of money for food. Sara was forced to appear on extremely risque shows with meager clothing covering her body as viewers pay to view and interact with her body. She was transformed into by her captors. As long as the customer had paid, she was free to follow any instructions, including those that involved walking, sitting, or dancing. The whites regarded her with a mixture of astonishment, faction, wonder, disdain, and amusement. Both sexes touched her and used her as a plaything. In fact, they treated her like an animal. Baartman was sold to Roe, a Parisian animal keeper, in the month of September of the year 1814. This transaction was made possible thanks to the notoriety Sara gained during the legal battles against Dr. Dunlop's contract with her. Concerned citizens brought the case because they felt sorry for Sara's plight and wanted to put an end to the exploitation and exhibitions. Sadly, they were unsuccessful because the contract's terms prevailed over their complaint, and Sara herself had once made a formal statement that she was doing all the exhibitions of her own free will and that it wasn't a mistreatment. However, the statement was dubious and lacking in integrity because people believed that she had been forced to make it. Additionally, Sara's poor command of the English language was a significant barrier to effective communication. Baartman, however, continued her performances, performing at the well-known Palais Royal while confined in a glass enclosure with a young rhinoceros. Roe provided her directions on the poses and body movements he wanted her to adopt. She was forced to display some sort of zoological behavior, which caused a psychological change in her and caused her to become an alcoholic. It was also rumored that she engaged in prostitution as a result. As a result, she met a famous French dentist who served as Napoleon Bonaparte's Surgeon General, and was in charge of the menagerie at the National Museum of Natural History. George Cuvier was interested in Sara in order to use her for a scientific study. He made observations that led to the conclusion that Sara's anatomy and movement were brusque and capricious, resembling those of monkeys. Cuvier was also widely regarded as the father of French naturalism and the comparative founder of anatomy. Baartman unexpectedly gained popularity among French scientists, and became the topic of monument-worthy scientific paintings in Paris. In the narrative, racial discrimination is founded on science. Cuvier wanted to examine Baartman's reproductive organ to see if there were any extended labia in an effort to support his theory that Africans were more closely related to animals than they are to humans. Baartman, however, objected to him viewing her genitalia. These persisted up until her untimely passing on December 29, 1815, in Paris, at the age of 26, tragically. She passed away in poverty and from drunkenness, syphilis, or pneumonia. Tragically, Baartman died at an early age of 26 due to illness, with possible causes including pneumonia, syphilis, or alcoholism. One would think death was the end of being inhumanely treated, but this wasn't the case with Baartman. After her death, her body was subjected to further indignity. Georges Cuvier, a naturalist, made a plaster cast of her body, dissecting and preserving her remains. Cuvier continued to examine her body even after she was dead to further his studies. In his research work, he established that black people are always inferior to white people. In 1817, her dissected body was cast in plaster and displayed in Paris. In 1975, her brain skeleton and the plaster cast of her body were exposed to the public in Paris. However, after receiving numerous complaints, feminists in the 1970s argued that the exhibition was damaging and demeaning to women. When Baartman's remains were ultimately removed from public view in 1974, France kept possession of them. Nelson Mandela asked the French government to return the remains to France when he became president of South Africa in 1994. Only after the South African Women's Day in the year 2022 would the French government agree to return her body. After 200 years had passed since her death, her body was interred in Cape Town. Sara's final burial place was designated a National Heritage Monument by former South African President Thabo Mbeki as compensation for her enslavement and torment. Sara has been designated as a symbol of the dreadful African colonial past. It is one of the worst humiliations of the African people in history, where the ironic best description of a black person's beauty and exquisite physical sculpture was given because of racial prejudice. Sara Baartman's story is indeed a tragic one, as it serves as a reminder of the exploitation, racism, and objectification that the African people have historically faced. Quite interestingly, it is rather ironic that the very reason Baartman was exhibited like an animal years ago has now become a socially desirable norm among women today, with some even going as far as undergoing surgery just to have those curvy hips. In recognition of Baartman's sad life, her story has been brought to the screen in a movie that depicts her life journey. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe for more exciting videos. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support means everything to us. See you in the next video.